Welcome to the Aging Well podcast. I'm Jeff Armstrong here with Corbin Bruton. In this and the episodes that follow, we will share candid discussions on aging and hear from the experts. We are here to inform and encourage as we experience, aging. This is part 3 on the habits of highly effective aging. The habits to be discussed include keeping self-esteem, maintaining fitness, being busy, remaining connected, being happy and making others happy, fighting for rights, and planning for fourth age. In this episode, we discuss habit 3, being busy, as well as habit 4, remaining connected. All right, so Corbin, we're going to move on now to habit 3 in this episode, which is being busy. And the article states, one of the biggest problems of retired life is a sense of emptiness getting out of active life. Best antidote to the same is to keep oneself busy. How to keep busy is purely an individual's choice. One may pick a new hobby like music or painting. One might choose to do social service. One might learn a new language or skill. One may become reader, and so on. Idea is to plan daily routine in such a way that one remains busy and active for the entire day, time as she was during working life. That was very hard to read, but I think primarily because this actually comes from a source in India, so English may not be the first language. So my apologies for that sounding a little bit choppy as I read through it, but the concept is pretty straightforward. We want to keep busy as we enter into that third age. And so the other habits we've talked about, this kind of builds as we go from first age, second age, on into third age. This one is strictly third age. So keeping busy during the third age. And it is important. I personally cannot imagine retiring because I don't know what I would do, because I kind of like what I am doing presently. I spend a lot of time preparing for my classes. There's a part of me that, it would be quite enjoyable to not have to go down and teach lectures on a daily basis. But I feel like I'd be doing much of the same kind of stuff one way or the other once I do kind of physically retire from Western Oregon University. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think that staying busy is really, really important. Being active is important. Finding that purpose is important. There is a lot of, especially, the saddest research that's out there is actually during the COVID pandemic, when people had to practice social distancing and they isolated each other within those assisted living, independent livings, retirement homes. And there was a huge decline in cognitive function. Emotional stress spiked to just a super sad level. But more importantly, you see this in today's day and age. You see individuals where, they retire and they're really excited to retire because they've earned that retirement. They've put in their years working for a company, and then maybe they might return as a guest appearance at one of the company functions. And you see these individuals and you're like, hey, how's everything going? And they just, I don't know, they just kind of look sad. They look like that little spark that got them out of bed because they had a purpose. They had something to go do. They don't have that. And talking about habit number 2, we talked about the importance of social well-being and getting involved into something and just having those interactions with people.
Well, you're kind of jumping ahead almost to habit 4, which is remaining connected. But all of these habits are going to be somewhat interconnected. And being busy is just, finding things to do. And I think going back to the book Super Aging, when we had David Kravitz and Larry Wolf on the podcast, that difference between super aging and default aging. What we're talking about here in Habit 3 is super aging, finding the things that are going to enable us to continue to participate in life and not just simply, okay, I've retired, I'm just going to sit in front of the TV or just sit in my recliner or my rocking chair on the porch and just kind of wait out these years until I'm called to the great beyond. Um, Keeping busy doesn't mean that we stop doing things as we retire. Retirement is going to be an opportunity to move beyond our careers and maybe go back and have time to do the things that maybe we didn't have to do because we had careers. So oftentimes, people will take up art or writing or teaching or participating in the communities, maybe coaching or doing various levels of social service, maybe volunteer work or whatever it might be. But it's doing things that are going to keep us engaged in our communities, keep our minds engaged, keep us growing spiritually, physically, intellectually, emotionally, and socially. And so it's important, I think, to make that choice to keep busy, do something new, find new things to do, to grow into as we attempt to age well.
Yeah, I agree. We need to find something. We have to find some purpose, dive into a hobby, learn and trade, learn a craft, whether it's painting, whether it's carpentry, whether it's going out and fishing, join a community center, teach something, like just get involved.
And I think it's also important to have a level of scheduled involvement. It's like a lot of times people retire and it's like, what am I going to do today? And they're trying to find something to do. But, we spend so much of our life with a schedule. We got to get up at a certain time and go to work, come home from work. And things are a little bit more regimented. And we tend to kind of get away from that a bit more as we go into retirement, or I presume that we do because I'm not retired yet. But, we talk often about you make fun of my bedtime, but I think it's important to continue to have a bedtime. Get to bed, get up early, have a routine of exercise, have a routine of perhaps journaling on a daily basis, reading, doing specific activities on a regular basis in order to keep ourselves engaged and a bit more routine, but not such a tight routine that it's almost boredom. We want to be doing things that are keeping us active throughout the day, just like we did during our working life, but it's going to be a different level of productivity.
I'm interested though, now that we're throwing this out on the table, I'm interested on what benefits it can have for an individual as they go into their fourth age, taking their regular work schedule, transitioning into retirement, and then switching to a whole new routine and a whole new schedule. And the reason why I'm interested in this is with my background, working with individuals with dementia or Alzheimer's, there is a thing called sundowners. And basically what sundowners is the individuals in the past, if they had such a strict regimen or a routine, once they kind of transition into that fourth age and they get Alzheimer's or dementia, a form of that is sundowners. And basically at a specific time, it's almost like clockwork. Their anxiety will spike and they believe that they're back in mentally in that time where they had that strict routine. And it could be right around 3:00. And then all of a sudden they start getting up and they're like, I got to go. And you're like, well, where are you going? And they're like, I got to go pick up the kids from school. I gotta go. I got to get going. And so I'm wondering if transitioning into retirement, getting that routine and switching it up, you're kind of switching that cognitive function which will transition into that fourth age as well, and hopefully prevent those with sundowners. Just a thought, just laying it out there.
Yeah, it's kind of beyond the scope of my experience, but I would assume that it it's going to have some benefits in, I don't know, necessarily preventing that, but if we are keeping the mind active, we're keeping the body active, then we know from the literature that that is going to have some positive effect on delaying the likelihood or the onset of dementia. And the whole goal of third age is to prolong the productive post-retirement age,
Right.
and shortening that fourth age. And so whether or not it has an effect on that aspect of dementia hopefully doesn't matter, because the period of time that we will spend in dementia is going to be relatively short compared to the rest of our life. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, totally.
And so, being busy is just, it's going to help to make the best of that third age and to use that time to do more productive types of things, so that retirement is not just a habit of doing nothing and just kind of waiting on fourth age to come. Because I think if we aren't busy, the likelihood of fourth age being longer and earlier is going to be greater.
Well, plus being involved into something, it makes the days go by a lot better. Have you ever, one day maybe slept in on a Saturday? I know that's a weird concept for you since you wake up at like 4 a.m. on Saturdays. But have you ever slept in and you just felt like, man, I wasted my entire day? The sleep was nice. It was nice to catch up on sleep, but I wasted my entire day.
Yeah, I don't. Sleeping into me is about 6 o'clock.
Yep.
And
See?
I can't remember the last time I even slept that late. Certainly on Saturdays, I don't get that opportunity, because we're recording this podcast early Saturday morning. I'm usually up again by 4:35 at the latest, and kind of prepping for you to hopefully get here on time to start recording. And, that starts my day. But I do feel a lot like if I sleep longer than 7 hours, I am wasting a good part of the day.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much that can be done that I don't want to waste the opportunity. And I think that is an attitude we need to take into the third age, is that the time that we have is an opportunity. So what are we going to do to utilize that opportunity? Are we going to waste that time, or are we going to do something productive in it? Either something that's going to help us to grow, or something that is going to help us to continue to contribute to our society. And I think that is what this concept of the habit 3 of being busy is all about, is, just avoiding that sense of emptiness where I don't have any worth anymore because I'm not working, but finding our worth and our value in doing other things beyond what our career was all about.
Well, and then what a great mindset of the time that we have is an opportunity. Like that if that is not motivation for someone to go out and do something, to make a memory, to learn a new skill, to be involved and to contribute into something bigger than yourself, like what? Wow. I don't know what is. That's an amazing point of view. I don't think a lot of people have that. A lot of people have the mindset of, well, I'm retired. I'm going to enjoy myself. I'm going to relax, but don't relax for too long, because like you said, it's an opportunity for you to carpe momento, right? Seize the moment.
And I mean, that definition of relaxation can be different too. For some individuals, relaxing might be, I've worked my ass off for 40 years. I've retired. Now it's time for me to relax, and I'm going to relax by, I'm going to take up painting, or I'm going to travel, or I'm just going to go on daily walks. I mean, the definition of relaxation is different for individuals, but it needs to be kind of a productive relaxation. It has to be, again, something that's contributing to your growth and an opportunity for you to contribute to your society. And it is an opportunity. And so relaxing should not be just sitting on a couch with a beer watching TV. Um, there's a time for that, perhaps, but in retirement, if that's the approach that we take to relaxation, we're going to see fourth age hit us in the face pretty quickly.
Totally.
So we really covered habit 3 pretty quickly. I think that's pretty easy one. I mean, just keep busy. How much more do we have to talk about that? Find the ways to keep busy. So that's going to jump into habit 4, which is remaining connected, because we've touched on that as well in both habit 3 as well as in habit 2 and even in habit 1. I mean, it's still remaining connected is going to have benefits on all 4 of those habits, or 3 of those habits. So according to the article, it says to counter loneliness, which is faced by many elders, one must remain connected, remaining in touch with family members, friends from schools, colleges, being part of senior citizen communities. There we go with that senior citizen label again. Clubs, either through physical or digital mode, are some of the habits third age elders must inculcate to lead a connected life. Apart from mitigating loneliness, this social connectivity creates a bond of strength. What do you think?
Well, yeah, and like I stated before, the research that really shows um, the importance of that social aspect was what took place during the COVID pandemic when people were isolated. Their cognitive functions went down, their mental functions went down, their emotional stress skyrocketed, and it was a really, really sad. And also, their physical went down as well. It's almost as if without that social interaction, people just kind of gave up, if that makes sense. And it's really sad.
Well, and that is affected across all 4 of the ages. We saw detriments to the first agers, whether it's, kids in K through 12, college age kids, all of them in those developmental years really lost a lot in those few years where they were a bit more socially isolated, although still that age group has a little bit better capacity to remain connected. In fact, too much of their social interaction is through the internet and more distance, whether they're texting friends as opposed to when I was a kid, I wanted to talk to a friend or see a friend, I'd walk over to their house and knock on the door. And now it's like you're texting kids, your kids text within the house. I see my students when we take a break in class, they're immediately pulling out their phones. They're connected, but is that such a healthy level of connection? We get into the second age, people that are working, many people lost a bit of that physical connectedness with work. Now, for some people, they really enjoyed that, and it's hard getting people back into the offices now because of the fact, well, hey, I could just work from home. This is great. Um, Third age, that was probably a little bit more difficult for people, but I think as we look at across the ages, the ones that's really suffered the most were the fourth agers, where they're already kind of in that declining health. It's outside of their capacity to kind of manage their social connectedness as much. They're more dependent on family coming to visit them. They can't get out and visit people. They are not an age presently that are as connected on social media and some of those types of things. And so they were definitely much more isolated. But when we look at the third agers and even younger, I think a lot of that disconnect that many people felt during COVID was somewhat a matter of choice. I mean, we had the opportunity to remain connected to one another, and sometimes, it's more a matter of, okay, I got to engage more in this social interconnectedness through the internet. And that's how we remain connected to people. I think it's a little bit more of a choice as opposed to something that we were forced into when it came to the COVID pandemic. And I still see people that will choose to disengage themselves out of this fear of the physical proximity and connectedness that might transmit a virus. And so it created a lot of fear, I think, that is continuing to have ramifications on our social connectedness. What do you think?
Well, I think that there's also other studies. We don't just have to go into COVID, but there are other studies that are out there that it's important to have physical touch. It's important to have a positive reaction. Got to have that social interaction, but not only that, you have to have a positive, loving, nourish physical portion to that social interaction, and it does carry forward for the rest of your life.
So yeah, so I definitely agree with that we have to set up that healthy interconnectedness essentially from birth, and as we transition from first age to second age on into third age. But it becomes difficult for many individuals, particularly in third age, to maintain some of that connectedness. We have, as we've moved through second age, where we have now moved away from our high school and college communities, we maybe move away from where we were raised. I mean, I have not lived in Pittsburgh for almost 30 years. And that's kind of still my home. That's where a lot of my friends are. I've moved away from, work colleagues from the past. I've moved away from college, friends and things like that. And it becomes difficult to maintain some of those relationships. And as we then retire from work, and you've worked for decades for a particular company, those are the people you've interacted with on a daily basis. And unless you, like you said, go back to some work event and visit, you don't see those people anymore.
Right.
Where are our social connectedness? And neighborhoods have changed. I grew up in a community that every house had a front porch, and we had relatively small yards. So you tended to spend more time going down to like the parks. We had a community pool. We had a lot of community interactions, but people would be on their front porch, and you walk through the community, you're seeing people, saying hi to them, you're interacting. If you look at how houses are built in suburbia today, there's no front porch anymore. It's back decks, it's fences, and we are isolating ourselves from our neighbors and our communities. And so we get into retirement and we don't have these community connections. We don't have our work connections anymore. It can become really harmful to our well-being if we can't find new ways of connecting to individuals. And so I find social media has been very beneficial. I know my age group has kind of commandeered Facebook from the younger generations, but it's a way of maintaining connectedness to people I went to college with, high school with, even students that I have had over the years. We're kind of doing a project right now of trying to find out where many of our more recent graduates, what they're doing in career-wise and with their degrees. And so I've kind of been reaching out to a number of different former students on social media, and I've had a bunch of them kind of respond back to me. And, we've connected now on Facebook. So now I have that connectedness either through Facebook or LinkedIn to a lot of different people that, I'm not interacting with them on a daily basis, but I have access to, and I can still kind of a bit more remotely be connected to what's going on in their lives. And it gives a little bit greater sense of satisfaction and a bit more sense of belonging. I discussed my epigenetics test with True Diagnostic co-founder Hannah Wendt in episode 162. Epigenetic testing measures baseline and changes in your pace of aging, giving you the power to steer your anti-aging or health and wellness journey in the right direction. I learned that I am aging well. Click on the affiliate link in the episode description, use the promo code AGEWELL, and receive a 12% discount on your epigenetics test and monitor your pace of aging.
Yeah, but I just feel like there's a huge difference between interacting with someone online versus interacting in that physical aspect, right? Like we even have tried to do a telecommuting with this podcast where, I would stay at my place and instead of doing it here, and it just didn't work out. It wasn't the same feel. The conversation didn't flow as well. I don't know. I feel like there's a huge factor being physically present with someone, being able to feel their energy, being able to give them a high five or a hug or a handshake versus I'm going to be behind a keyboard and I'm going to have a conversation that way.
Well, I mean, if there's a choice between interacting in person versus digitally, yes, obviously I would favor the in person, but that's not always possible. And uh, oftentimes, you might live in a community and you have associations with people. You say hi to them, and you know, I had a student a number of years ago. It was from Chile, and he pointed out to me that we Americans will, as we pass them, hey, how you doing? But we don't expect an answer, and you almost freak somebody out if you really, well, oh, thanks, glad you asked, and you start spilling your guts on what's going on in your life, and the person's like, oh my God, I was just kind of greeting you. Whereas in other cultures, when people are asked how are you doing, it's an invitation to a deeper social interaction. And I feel like we have far more pseudo personal interactions on a daily basis when we're present with people than some of the interactions that we may have with people that are farther away, and it might be either by phone, by email, or by Facebook or other social media interactions.
In the digital age, though, yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of stuff can get lost in translation. You might misread something, same words, but maybe you're misreading the tone because
Well,
in your
no, you're
mind.
absolutely correct there, but again, we need more social interactions, and I think we're at an advantage in the current digital age of being able to remain connected more universally. I mean, I have interactions with friends, throughout the globe. One of those students that I was interacting with has finished up her master's recently in London, England.
Mm.
And we actually kind of reconnected over the podcast about a year or so ago. She said, hey, I saw you have a podcast. I've been listening to it all the time. I share it with people. So when I see, that somebody has listened to this podcast in London, England, I'm pretty sure it's Sarah, and I wouldn't have that interaction if I was limited to what we were limited to centuries ago with, or even just a few decades ago with the levels of communication that we had. Prior to the digital age, I grew up, we had a phone on the wall. And, if the phone rang, we generally ran to it because that was, there was somebody on the other end that we probably wanted to talk to. Now with my cell phone, most of the times I'm like, I don't recognize this number. I'm going to decline. And usually it is spam or something like that. Um, but we were able to be more physically connected with people. But if you moved away, you lost touch with a lot of people. I have a lot of friends that I'm reconnecting with after decades because I have access to them digitally that I did not have when I moved away. Or, as I moved away, I have found one of my old address books recently. It's got phone numbers in there from probably 30, 40 years ago. And it's like, I wonder if I called any of those numbers who I would reach, because I'm guaranteed those are not the same numbers anymore. But you move away and other people move away, we become far less connected.
Mm.
And, a century ago, people remained in the communities where they grew up, and you had family there, you had people you worked with, you had people you went to school with. Now, if I look at where my family is, I have my dad's in Arizona. My mom's passed away. I have a sister in Iowa, a sister in West Virginia, and a sister in Maryland. I have cousins in Ohio, North Carolina. Pam's family, my wife's family, is spread from LA to Maryland to Florida. I mean, we're so far spread out, and it's very difficult to just pick up a phone and call people when you're across multiple different time zones and different schedules and all those types of things. And so we can maintain a little bit higher level of connectivity by engaging via social media.
That's true. I mean, that's a good way to look at it. So my fiance, her family is from Bakersfield, and obviously we live here in Oregon, the Portland metro area. So we don't really necessarily get to see the nieces and the nephews, but her sister-in-law, the wife of her brother, is so phenomenal at constantly sending us photos and pictures and videos of the kid. And it's, although we're not physically there, we still are able to kind of watch them grow and transition and blossom from babies to toddlers, and then eventually they'll go into teenagers. But it's kind of cool watching them, which it's not as perfect scenario as actually physically being there and making those memories with them, but it's still a cool way to, wow, look how big they're getting, and just feeling like you're a part of that growing process as well.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's important to just understand that remaining connected is rather broad, and it's the important thing is maintaining that contact with people, whether it's physical or digital, and that we can understand that we are interconnected and that we're not alone in this world. If I had to depend on physical connectedness in Oregon, I don't think I would have managed 15 years here, because personally I find social interactions to be rather superficial. I don't find the level of community, even though I have some friends. I don't find the same depth of community that I had when, say, I lived in New York. And I have friends in New York that I have not lived in New York for over 25 years, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And I can pick up a phone, or I could, if I traveled in New York, last time we were there, it's been several years, but I had dinner with three of my three of my close friends. I wouldn't say all my closest friends. I mean, I'd say they were among the closest, but I had a lot of close friends there. And I only lived there for, two periods, for 2 years the first time and about a year the second time. But those relationships, and we took Pam met him for the first time. My kids were there, and it was like we never missed a beat. And those relationships were so deep and so connected that it's amazing. I mean, it's just, there's a certain depth there, and I can connect with any of those people in a moment and be back to kind of where we were. I don't know that I have that same level of connectedness here. There's sometimes I have conversations with people, and you feel like, yeah, they just want to carry their own side of the conversation. They're not really concerned or interested in what I have to say. And to me, it's rather troubling. And it's important to find those connections and relationships that are going to be nurturing, whether they are physical or whether they are going to be digital. And that's the important thing, is to actually have connection, because we can feel just as lonely and isolated in physical proximity to people than we can feel if we are, interacting digitally.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong on that. We've all been there. We've all been in a social circle where you just kind of feel like the third wheel, or you feel like the outcast almost.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's going to happen. I'm not talking a third wheel scenario here. I'm just talking about a superficial level of connectedness as opposed to a deeper, more spiritual, emotional, social connectedness that helps us to age well. And that's the important part of this habit 4 is finding, even if it's only those few people, if you have one or two close, deep relationships in your life, you're going to be better off than having hundreds of superficial relationships. I came across a Robin Williams quote recently that I think really fits here. He said, "I used to think that the worst thing in life was to end up alone. It's not. The worst thing in life is to end up with people who make you feel alone." And I think that is kind of the final note to end on this particular habit of maintaining connectedness, is that find the people that engage you and embrace you and support you and help develop your positive focus to move you toward that better fourth age. The people that are going to be with you when you hit fourth age, so that, we can age well. Thank you for listening. I hope you benefited from today's podcast. And until next time, keep aging well. If you have topics you would like to have us discuss on the Aging Well podcast, please click on the links in the episode description to send us a text or record your message or comments. We'd love to hear from you and how we can help you age well. If you benefit from the Aging Well podcast and would like to support the content financially, please click on the Support the Show link or support our affiliates and advertisers.